Is a Chinese card trading app encouraging child abuse? Ugh, there goes our monetization. The CCP is helping Iran rearm after the June war, and Shein got caught selling something very, very bad. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell, and today I'll be talking about some demonetizable stuff. So I'm very grateful for today's sponsor, Surfshark. Whenever you go online, you really should be using a VPN like Surfshark to cover your tracks and protect your identity. I'll tell you more in a bit. Well, it didn't take long. In the wake of Israel's devastating attacks on Iran back in June that wiped out a huge number of Iran's missiles, Iran is rearming, and it's getting a little help from China. Because of course it is. According to intelligence sources in Europe, many shipments of sodium perchlorate, a key component in manufacturing mid-range missiles, have arrived from China in the port city of Bandar Abbas, which coincidentally is also home to Chinese BRI projects in the country. This isn't the first time this has happened either. Back in February, CNN reported on sanction-defying Chinese shipments of the exact same chemical to the exact same port. And in April, Bandar Abbas also saw a huge explosion and fire that killed hundreds, which experts say was probably caused by sodium perchlorate from China. So this is nothing new. But new UN sanctions are in effect now, so the situation is a little bit different this time. Not a lot, though. Technically, this component isn't specifically listed in the UN ban on materials exported to Iran, so it could leave China with some wiggle room to argue that it's complying with the sanctions. And technically, the CCP says they have no knowledge of any of this, so it could just be private companies doing. I'm sorry, I couldn't even get through that. But legality aside, what we're seeing once again is that despite the CCP claiming that it wants peace and stability in the Middle East, they're doing everything to undermine it by providing them the biggest danger to the stability of infrastructure outside of their own BRI projects. And speaking of allies of the CCP, Russia is planning its first ever UN-dominated bond issue, $4.9 billion worth. They're hoping they'll go through the roof and prevent Putin from throwing them off one. Analysts say that these bond sales probably will be financed by big state exporters that already deal with UN, since Western sanctions have targeted the Moscow exchange. And both Lukoil and Rosneft, which the Trump administration recently sanctioned, are already repatriating their earnings in UN before the sanctions kick in later this month. Looks like Russia is increasingly accepting its fate as a CCP resource colony. I wonder if they're trying to expand into Ukraine because they'll need room for all that water they're carrying for China. Even though neither China nor the US specifically talked about it afterwards, it appears US President Donald Trump did in fact press Xi during their meeting to release the pro-democracy Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai, who according to his family and rights group has been held in solitary confinement for 1,700 days and is experiencing health problems. Lai's son, who lives in Taiwan, said, "Knowing President Trump's reputation as the liberator-in-chief, I pray that his continued support and commitment will convince President Xi to free my father before it's too late." I don't know about the liberator-in-chief bit, but here's hoping that Trump can help free Jimmy Lai. But Trump also recently shared some fond memories of his time meeting Xi. Namely, how terrified all the Chinese officials were of Xi.
I said, I want my cabinet to behave like that. I'm demanding that I want them sitting up like that, Tim, just nice and straight. I never saw posture like that. I've never seen men so scared in their lives. They have the equivalent of a vice president. I said, are you going to answer my question? And he's like, he doesn't move. I said, what's wrong with this guy? I will answer all questions. Why don't you behave like that? JD doesn't behave like that. JD buds into conversations. I want to have that for at least a couple of days, okay, JD?
So Trump wants a couple of days of that? He wants a couple of days of all of his officials secretly plotting to kill him? Well, to each his own. And after the break, I'm getting demonetized for these stories. Welcome back. According to state-affiliated South China Morning Post, a Chinese toy platform refund policy is requiring parents to scold and beat their kids for so-called unapproved spending. Which is obviously a stupid idea. If anyone in China should get slapped for reckless spending, it's the CCP. Qendao is the leading app for secondhand products like toys or trading items, and it's generating a ton of controversy. Turns out that a mother named Li Yun realized that her 11-year-old daughter secretly bought $70 worth of trading cards on the app. So Li contacted the seller to try and get a refund. But naturally, the seller thought something was fishy with her explanation of what happened. So the seller responded with a minor refund notice demanding a 5-minute video of the parent slapping the child, explicitly stating that the video must not be paused and the slapping sounds must be clearly audible. Requesting a 5-minute uncut video of slapping? Did they get confused and think they were making a request to OnlyFans? The so-called notice also required the mother to scold her child in a 3-minute video because 2.5 minutes of verbal abuse and 5 minutes of physical abuse clearly wouldn't be enough. And both people had to be visible, and a 1,000-character handwritten apology from the child, signed, fingerprinted, and read aloud by the parent. I know we're not supposed to kink shame, but whatever this kink is, I think we should shame it. The app has clarified that this was the seller's policy and not their own, and urged the two sides to work out an agreement amongst themselves. Meanwhile, public opinion online has been divided. One social media user wrote that I actually support it. The kids secretly used their parents' money to make a purchase, violated the sales rules, and now demands a refund? Why should the seller take all the blame? Probably because their policy is to record a video that the kid will be showing a therapist someday and refer to as Exhibit A. But someone else posted, my first reaction is shock and disbelief. This is no way to resolve disputes. It's treating people like objects to be humiliated at will. But as we've seen many times before on this channel, being treated like objects to be humiliated is the norm under the Chinese Communist Party. That's why we make these videos, and why we need your support more than ever. So go to our exclusive website, ChinaUncensored.tv, where you can subscribe for the cost of a bag of coffee and access content we can't post on YouTube. Plus, you can chat with me, Matt, Shelley, and the whole team. And please, don't ask me to scold and slap Matt for several minutes for free. Don't forget to check it out, and thanks for your support. And while we're on the topic of shameable kinks, the Chinese fast fashion e-commerce platform Shein has opened a physical location in a department store in Paris. Meanwhile, on the exact same day, France moved to suspend the Shein site over childlike sex dolls and weapons found on their site. I'm just asking for demonetization today, aren't I? France's consumer watchdog discovered the dolls on November 5th after having already discovered sellers on the site offering weapons including brass knuckles, which are illegal in France. France's Ministry of Finance has asked the European Commission to begin an investigation and said it would do its own internal review of the company within 48 hours. Shein said it had sanctioned the sellers and chose on its own to suspend the website in France in order to review and strengthen its third-party seller policies. Luckily for the owners of the department store who are trying to boost youth sales with their new Shein section, this won't affect the physical location in any way. So the French people lined up around the block to get into the store can still buy their cheap Chinese kitsch. And the French people protesting it can still protest. France gonna France. And YouTube gonna demonetize. Which is why I'm especially grateful for Surfshark this week. Because did you know that every time you go online, everything you do is potentially compromised? And that's why the people at Surfshark created a VPN that keeps your internet activity private and secure. If you're not taking active steps to protect yourself, everything you do is being tracked and logged by the websites you visit, your internet service provider, and often by your own government. Using a VPN makes you harder to track. Surfshark has servers you can connect to in over 100 countries, more than any other VPN. That includes a server in the British Virgin Islands where the law allows companies to not log user data. So stay safe and check out Surfshark. With just one Surfshark account, you can connect as many devices as you want. It also comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to surfshark.com/uncensored and use the code uncensored to get up to 4 months extra. The link is in the description below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.